Now, I don't necessarily claim to be a prophet, but I do believe that there are people who are actually following God's law, statutes, and commandments that God reveals certain things to. And so there are certain prophetic visions or dreams or anything like that that could be had. And so with that being said, I just want to share some things that are on my heart and what God has really told me to speak about, even though I don't really even necessarily understand it myself too much. But that is what God's calling me to do. And so the other night I had a dream where God's hand came down out of the darkness and revealed a ball unto me. And in this ball, it wasn't necessarily a crystal ball, but it was like a ball that you could see time in. And in it was a king, and the king was holding a scepter of fire. And the throne was also made of fire. And he threw the scepter across the land, and the whole earth was scorched in a flame of judgment. Now, I woke up from the dream and my stomach was more empowered than fearful, which is kind of interesting because whenever I feel fear, usually it's in my stomach, and usually it's more of like a sinking feeling, and the fear is more like a fear of like being openly vulnerable and just being able to be taken advantage of. Whereas the empowerment, it's more like an electrifying feeling in my stomach, the same kind of place that fear usually is, but it's more of like a bolt of energy being just transfumed and transfigured into my whole body through my core. And I woke up with this feeling, which was very interesting. And so I decided to do a little bit of research on this topic and see if there are any Bible verses that have to do with something like this. It turns out in Isaiah 66:15 and 16, it says, and I've got the Bible here, it says, "For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and his chariots like whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many." Well, that was pretty much what happened in my dream. And the king was a very noble king that I saw. It wasn't like a tyrant. And the flame of judgment wasn't necessarily a flame of punishment. It was just judgment. That's what I think a lot of people get wrong about God's judgment. God's judgment is not necessarily a punishment all the time, just like any kind of parent, right? A parent will, let's say you do well with grades or something, and you're doing well growing up with your grades, and I don't know, maybe you get, let's just take for example, if you have like a test or something on your quarterfinal or your semester final or whatever, if you get an A, you get $5. You get a B, you get $4. Anything less than that, you don't get anything. Let's just take that as an example. I'm not saying that that's what happened to me or anybody else. I'm just saying that's an example, right? Your judgment is going to be based off of how you score in the test. So you get what you deserve, really. And this is a universal law. This is a spiritual law. And it's not always going to be the case that you get what you deserve in this life. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean to say that you have a past life or anything like that. I do think that it's possible that we have lived before, but I don't necessarily want to condone this kind of thinking or perpetuate this kind of thinking, because you can get into kind of muddy waters. I do think that there might be some substance to it, and there are like Bible verses that can actually seemingly suggest that that might be the case. But what matters is this life. Like, let's take it, for example, you have had multiple lives. What really matters is what you know in this life, what you have control over in this life. Are you righting your wrongs as much as you can in this life? Are you doing as much as you can in this life? Because if you're not, then that's something that no matter if you've had past lives or not, you should probably be looking into a little bit. I'm not one to tell you what you should and shouldn't do necessarily, but if you're not righting your wrongs, or at least trying to, it's probably time to consider that and consider why you haven't done so just yet. But this is part of the judgment. This is part of life in general, is those that fear and yet love God's judgment are not necessarily going to be having anything to fear about it. Like, it's one thing to fear judgment. It's another thing to fear judgment because you know you've done something wrong. Now, if you've done everything you can to do what is right, there shouldn't be an issue for you. There shouldn't be any kind of trouble for you, because you've done all that you could. And it's still okay that you might fear God's judgment a little bit, but you're not going to be anywhere near as painfully, observantly aware of the potential downfall, because everybody knows that the things that you do in this life really do matter. Everything you do matters. And that's not hyperbole or anything like that. That's legitimately a fact. Everything that you do in this life matters. Or nothing you do matters. That's really the easiest way to look at things. And it's not just because it's easy, it's because it's actually true. You don't really think like some things you do matter. Sometimes you do things that don't matter. No, it's like everything you do, everything that you say matters. And Jesus has said that does not which go into a man will be judged by, he will not be judged by what goes into him. He will be judged by what comes out of him, right? So what exactly does that mean? It means like not only what you say, but how you behave, what you do, your actions, etc. This is how you're going to be judged. This is how you're going to be refined by the fire of the Holy Spirit, or you're going to reject it. You're going to reject it. And if you want to reject it, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But is that really something that you want to do? Is that really something that let's say God isn't real, for those that may have doubts. If God isn't real and nothing matters, then why, like, what are you living for? What truly do you have to live for? With God, with the Creator, those that know God is real, we all have something to live for. We have something to strive for. We have something to believe in that is higher than ourselves. I was an atheist for quite some time. I was an atheist up until I was about 22 years old. And in fact, I've cursed God at certain points in my life because I felt like life was just so unfair. I didn't know why I was being dealt the cards that I was dealt. I even said to God at that point, I said, you know, if you're real, why did you fuck me over so much? Why did you do that? Like, I didn't deserve that. And then it wasn't until years later that I read the book of Job, and I really resonated with the book of Job, because at the beginning of Job, God and Satan basically make a bet, which is a strange thing to do, isn't it? And so God and Satan make a bet, and God basically says, no, Job is fine. He's gonna, he's gonna praise me no matter what. And Satan says, oh, I bet he won't. And God says, okay, well, I bet he will. And so Job does everything. Job does everything he can to not curse God, even though his family turns against him, people turn against him, he loses everything, he gets sick. The devil basically is permitted to do anything to Job except kill him. And in a way, I felt like that sometimes in my life. I felt like Satan was doing everything possible except for killing me at certain points. It's like the only thing worse than this is actually being killed or being murdered or something, or actually becoming a thief or becoming a murderer. And I will never do that. I have no need to. I have no desire to. But I'm capable of defending myself, don't get me wrong. But I'm not just going to go out and be malicious or anything of the sorts, or vindictive, or have this sense of revenge with me, or the spirit of revenge with me. So this is where we're at in our society, right? This is where we're at. We've got to choose who we're going to be praising. Are we going to be praising the emptiness of life, the nothingness, and Satan? Because that's really what it is Satan. That nothingness and that void in your stomach, for those that don't believe in God, that's because you worship Satan and you don't even know it. And even if you do know it, because I had members in my family that said that they were Satanists, and I mean, their spirits were just dark. I remember even when they said that, they were like, no, it actually makes sense. Like, it makes sense to be a Satanist. And I was like, I wasn't even following Christ at that point. And I was just like, do you hear yourself? Like, what? You're saying that, like, you're saying that you follow the devil and it's logical? Okay, it might be logical, sure. If you're crazy and you're deranged and you want to see murder and wickedness fall upon the land. But God, just because God is capable of that kind of stuff doesn't mean he's going to do that. And God is going to bring that flame of judgment upon us all. And again, I'm not a prophet. I'm just kind of telling you guys what I saw and why I think it's important. And with that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful. And until next time, peace be with you.